Welcome to the LDN Radio Show, brought to you by the LDN Research Trust. I'm your host, Linda Elsiegood. I have an exciting lineup of guest speakers who are LDN experts in their field. We will be discussing low-dose Naltrexone and its many uses in autoimmune diseases, cancers, etc. Thank you for joining us. Today we're joined by Nicole from the United States, and she has the triad, MCAS, EDS, POTS, Lyme Disease and endometriosis. Thank you for joining us today, Nicole.
Thanks so much for having me, Linda. I'm really excited to be here.
So could you tell us, how old were you when things started to go wrong?
I only recently connected the dots that things really started to go wrong around the age of 11 or 12 when I kind of started my period. That seems to have been when everything started to fall apart. The first thing I experienced was allergies. But they were severe enough that I started immunotherapy. And I was taking Montelukast and multiple antihistamines to try and stabilize myself. And then my symptoms progressively got worse over the years as more and more things piled on.
So could you tell us, the symptoms that you had?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. I just assume people don't want to hear all the gory details, but absolutely. So yes, like I said, around the age of 12, started kind of with allergies. And then by the age of 16, 15, I was put on birth control because my periods were really painful and I had this really bad cystic acne. And so my doctor was like, or actually it was my dermatologist who put me on it, shockingly enough. He was like, here, take this hormonal birth control, and it'll get rid of your acne and your painful periods and you'll be good. And for a few years it did. And then around that same time, I developed pretty severe depression. So then my mental health really started to go along with my physical health at that time. And ultimately, over the next few years, when I was in college, I started having anaphylactic episodes that were relatively unexplained. And at that time, we just kind of assumed that it was something I ate, a medication I took, and that was what it was, and we moved on. Um, and then my mental health started deteriorating even further. I ultimately developed borderline personality disorder. And yeah, by the time I wound up in LA around the age of 23, I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. I had these random anaphylactic episodes that we assumed I was just developing new food allergies constantly. And I had pretty painful menstrual cycles. So at that point, I was adult enough to start handling my own health. And fortunately, I was living in LA, where there's so many good doctors. So I started undertaking the journey of, what does all this mean? Oh, I forgot one thing. When I was 12, I was a competitive swimmer most of my life. And I started developing shoulder pains and my shoulders would sublux. And saw doctors at the time. They were like, oh, you're just a girl. You don't have enough muscle. So just build up more muscle. But every time I would try to do that, it would hurt and nothing worked. So I ended up having to stop swimming at the age of 18. I didn't go swim in college because of the pain. So that was also kind of my least concerning issue, but it was still kind of running through all of those other things. So when I came to LA, I got serious help for my personality disorder, and within a year that was cured and it's gone. And I'm so grateful that I was able to recover from that as well as I did. Um, I started experiencing shoulder pain again, because I started working out, and I sought help from some of the best doctors here in LA, and they did a bunch of imaging and they were like, you got nothing wrong with your shoulders. I don't know what to tell you. And then one doctor walks in to the room after all this imaging. He grabs me by the hand, doesn't say a single word, pulls my thumb like this, and says, "That's what I suspected." And I was like, "Care to enlighten me?" And he said, "You're hypermobile." And I said, "And?" And he said, "Well, you just need to build up more muscle than the average person. Go see this physical therapist. He's really good." Um, and I'm grateful to that doctor because he got halfway there and it was enough to get my mind spinning and working. But I did see the physical therapist. He helped a bit, but I didn't really understand at the time what that problem truly was and what it meant for the rest of my health. So, then at the age of 26, decide I'm done with this period pain. This is not normal. Actually, I had gone on a trip with my sister and she was on her period during the trip. And I saw that she was taking Advil and like she was just totally fine. Like, and it was confusing to me how someone can just take Advil on their period and just walk around like they're not faint, they're not dizzy, they're not in excruciating pain, they're not nauseous. And that was kind of when I was like, okay, I'm gonna seek out this a little bit further. I started asking my mom questions and I found out she had endometriosis and so then I sought out best doctor in LA for that and got a surgery a few weeks later and was diagnosed with endometriosis. And it was removed, obviously, too. So after that, I was like, okay, I think I can trust myself. Like it was really this process of like, do I trust what I'm feeling? After all these years of doctors being like, oh, take this, you're fine, it's all good. And, I can go into much more detail about the horrible things they've said to me. But you know, after that, I was like, I trust myself. And that really gave me the courage to really keep pushing. So ultimately, I remembered what my shoulder doctor had said about me being hypermobile. I did a little searching on the Google machine and found out about Ehlers-Danlos. And I said, that's what I have. That explains all my symptoms. The comorbidities explain all my symptoms. That. So I sought out a doctor in LA, asked them some questions like, hey, how do you diagnose this? Can you help me? They diagnosed me with hypermobile EDS. I did genetic testing to confirm that I didn't have any of the other 12 subtypes. And I don't. Um, and that was super helpful. So then I found a immunologist in LA, got diagnosed with Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, and found out that those random anaphylactic episodes were actually a condition. Um, and that there was treatment and stuff that we could do. So that was really exciting for me. And then after all that, I decided that I wasn't done because I still had other symptoms that I thought fit. You referred to it as the triad. I've actually heard it referred to as the pentad. 5 things, but I was like, I still have other things. So I sought out a naturopathic doctor in LA, and they also found Lyme disease and Bartonella and Babesa and mold exposure and a few other things. So, that was within the last year. So I'm actually still like uncovering things, but we've made some really good progress on treating the mold. We're working on treating the Lyme and the other tick-borne illnesses now. And I do think once we treat those, I'll be in a much better state where at least I'm only dealing with some of these, for lack of a better term, genetic conditions that I just have instead of these things also attacking my body too. That was a long-winded answer, but I hope that's okay.
That was perfect. So you said that was only like a year ago. Before you got that final diagnosis or set of diagnosis, what was a typical day like for you? Could you describe from when you got up to when you go to bed?
Yeah, so it's gotten progressively worse over the years. I would say like in college I was pretty functional. Um, but I'd say over the last 5, 6 years, it's gotten progressively worse. So like some of the worst days would look like I'd wake up and I wouldn't be able to wake up, for one. Waking up is extraordinarily challenging for me, especially if I get less than 9 hours of sleep. So it became a little bit challenging professionally because I really, really needed to be sure that I got 9 hours of sleep every single night, or I would not function. Like my brain just, it didn't work. So I really had to prioritize sleep. Once I finally woke up, I lay in bed for 30, 45 minutes. So that was really, really challenging for me. When I got married, it helped because I actually had my husband and my dogs come wake me up every morning because it was just that challenging for me. So the first big challenge of the day is getting out of bed. Okay. Once I'm out of bed, I normally am pretty slow in the mornings. I take my medications, I drink an echinacea tea that I feel like really helps me kind of recover from the night and get ready for the day. Um, and I'm okay for a few hours, and then I feel like fatigue is, one of my big things that sets in pretty quickly. At my worst, I would need naps at least once a day. Around like 1, 2, or 3, I'd have to take a nap. And then it became problematic again because I couldn't wake up from the nap. So at my worst, I would fall asleep at 2 or 3. I'd wake up in an hour or two, but then I'd fall right back asleep. And before I knew it, it was 6 or 7 o'clock at night. It became nearly impossible for me to cook meals for myself. So I was really fortunate that I could afford pre-cooked food delivery services. So before I got married, I was really relying on services to deliver my meals so that I didn't have to stress about food. Because not only with my allergies, but with just the real lack of energy, and not really being able to just stand like that and move around in the kitchen for a long time, it was really hard on me to feed myself. And I wound up eating crackers for dinner, which is just not healthy at all and not nutritious and definitely wasn't helping my situation. Um, and then, but unfortunately, by the time it was bedtime, I wasn't tired anymore. I was an insomniac, so I didn't fall asleep until like midnight or whatever. And then again, having to get that 9 hours of sleep was really tough. So honestly, getting married, I didn't get married for this reason, but like I got married, my husband has just been so incredibly supportive and helpful. He cooks us dinner every night. So, I don't have to worry about feeding myself. It's so helpful. He and the dogs help wake me up so that I can get out of bed, right? My energy has been quite a bit better over the last few months. I had a bit of an episode where I was like pretty malnourished because of a hiatal hernia that I had, and I wasn't keeping food down. So that was really just killing my energy too. But now that that's repaired, I'm feeling a little bit more energetic. So I'm usually able to go without naps during the day. But my big problem is I'm supposed to do physical therapy for my Ehlers-Danlos. And I just don't have the energy to do even basic physical therapy most days. So that's what I'm really working towards with this Lyme mold, treatment. I'm working towards energy, honestly. Like, and then I also have a bunch of other symptoms. Like some days I'm really nauseous. Some days I have a lot of symptoms in my sinuses. So my sinuses will be blocked. I have a sore throat, like constipation, diarrhea, whatever it is, I could go on. And then during my period, obviously the pain from that is it's pretty brutal, and I need some serious medications to help with that. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. So, on a score of 1 to 10, what would your quality of life have been like prior to finding this doctor?
It was pretty bad. 10 being the best.
Mhm.
Okay, then I would say like it's really hard because my answer is like a 3.5 or 4 but I hesitate to go that low because I was able to work this whole time. I've been able to keep a job. And I know that a lot of people aren't able to do that, but I think I've been fortunate in two respects. One, my brain has been relatively unaffected, knock on wood. So I've kept my mind, which is amazing, and I'm beyond grateful for that. And number two, I have been able to either work remote or negotiate what do they call it? Accommodations with my employers previously that have allowed me to function. So I'm a big fan of workforce accommodations, and knowing what you need and asking your employer for that and getting it, because that really helped me through some of my worst when I wasn't working remotely. But working remotely has really, it's honestly changed my life, and I'm a huge, huge proponent of it, especially for individuals who have disabilities.
That's good. So I know you're not there yet, and you're still working through the maze, finding your answers. But what would you say your quality of life is like now?
It's a great question. Probably closer to a 6.5. It's definitely, like I said, the fatigue for me is the big thing, just not being able to do things. And with my husband's support, I've had to expend less energy on some of these other things. It's the spoon theory that I'm sure you've heard a million times, right? I'm using less spoons, right? Because he's so incredibly helpful. And I have more spoons, and the treatment that I've been working on to reduce the mold and the tick-borne illnesses has been helping some too.
Exactly. Well, you've shared your story absolutely amazingly, and thank you for that. What would your advice be to other people who are suffering all these symptoms and have no answers, nobody to help them, nobody's believing them? What would you
Yeah.
say?
I have like the biggest piece of advice, two things, but they're very connected. Number one, trust yourself. Like, if you feel that this is happening in your body, even if you don't have a reason for it or science tells you you're insane, I don't care, because there's a lot of things science doesn't know yet, and you're probably right. So if you feel something, trust yourself. And if you do that, number two is going to follow pretty well, which is do not stop. I know that it's exhausting, and I don't want to downplay that, especially when you're really fatigued and your brain's not functioning right. Like, I know that it's exhausting, but I only got this far because I didn't stop. My parents say I'm a dog with a bone, right? Like, you just have to find whatever doctor you can. I've found Facebook groups to be super helpful in finding doctors in my area and, elsewhere. But just keep pushing. Like, don't stop. No matter how many doctors tell you you're crazy, no matter how many tell you it's in your head, you're just a girl, it's part of being a girl, whatever they tell you, right? Ignore it, trust what you feel, and go find a doctor who's going to listen to you. And then if you find a doctor who's going to listen to you and then they can't help you, find one who will listen to you and will help you. If they don't help you, find another. A lot of us have had to see multiple different doctors to try and just treat one condition. And you have to just know that that's part of the process, but the payoff will be huge. And getting your life back, even a little bit of your life back, is worth it.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
I'm Dr. Leonard Weinstock, a guy who's been prescribing LDN since 2005, and I've seen the wonders. And I keep on seeing them, especially in hard to diagnose conditions. They're not that hard to do, but once you know about Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, Postural Orthostatic Tachycardia Syndrome, and Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, you'll find that 17% of your friends or relatives have one or more of these conditions, and you can help them. We're making a documentary to wake up the medical community, to educate the population, but we need funding. So please fund whatever you can afford, no matter how little. www.mcasfund.com. That's mcasfund.com.
Any questions or comments you may have, please email me, Linda, Linda, at ldnrt.org. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciated your company. Until next time, stay safe and keep well.